Hey guys, Michaela here, Feral Woman. I wanted to check in after the last couple posts I made, mainly the one titled "Another U.S. White Man Making Me Feel Uncomfortable," or freaking me out, because guess who came out of the woodwork? All these white men from the U.S. calling me calling me a drama queen, calling me crazy, calling me paranoid, that I need to get on meds, etc. And maybe these are trolls, I don't know. If they're not, I could almost promise you these are men who would or have hurt a woman. So this is what happens, right? You share a concern. The people who would condone that kind of behavior and participate in it themselves are going to attack you, and the people who wouldn't be able to conceive of doing something like that dismiss you. And I've had a couple white men, as that title indicated, made me feel uncomfortable particularly since getting to Costa Rica. One of them in Arnal kind of made me feel unsafe, but I could outrun him. He was in his late 70s. I wasn't worried about him coming after me. I was a little worried about my animals. And again, I get called paranoid for that. But guys, people are unkind and cruel. And if they get mad enough, they could do some shit, right? And it wouldn't be all that difficult to accomplish some of these things. So maybe some call it paranoid. I call it pattern recognition. I meant to look up what qualifies someone as an expert, but I forgot. But maybe a master's degree and 7 years post-grad work might be close to expert level in human behavior. So when I'm seeing these things, I'm picking up on pattern recognition. It's pattern recognition, picking up on things that maybe other people don't pick up on. Because I'm trained to do it, and I do it every day. And well, not every day, I don't work every day, but this is one of those things that you end up doing all the time. It just becomes a part of who you are. So I'm picking up on body language, I'm picking up on things that they almost said but then didn't say. I'm picking up on, the way that the timing of the text that he sent, and that an hour later he was still stewing on it. Guys, that's a big deal. This isn't someone who was able to calm and self-soothe. Like, they were still pissed an hour later. And I had smelled alcohol, so was he continuing to drink? And once you start drinking, your frontal lobe shuts down. Your executive functioning is gone. So anyway, not only that, the shaman that I ran into yesterday, who was validating my experience here, he had his house burnt down right near where I'm living not too long ago. He only stays here 4 to 6 months out of the year because of what I'm talking about. Now, of course, he's a man, so he's not necessarily worried about maybe rape, but still, there's aggression and violence occurring if you're, considered an outsider. So there's that. As far as the crazy part, I am crazy, guys. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm not delusional. I'm not. I don't have schizophrenic breaks. I don't have auditory or visual hallucinations. Like, I've been on medication. I came off quite a few medications, because that's another comment. This girl needs meds. Sometimes I do. You're right. Came off of them all in Mexico. Glad to be off of them. I'm a firm believer in them when they're needed. They are great. They are a technology that we should be using. Are they abused? Yeah, that too. So anyway, came off of mine, been doing fine up until lately, a little bit of depression peeking in. But for it to be considered depression, it needs to be at least 2 weeks of this consistent state. And then I have to consider that I am PMSing. So I'm going to wait it out, see if it dissipates, if my hormones leveling out helps things. I'm already feeling a little better today, which is something else I want to touch on. But that doesn't insult me, guys. Sometimes I do need meds. And if the depression continues, I may go back to them. I don't really want to. And I'm going to do the things to try to avoid it, like today, getting out in the sun, walking by the water. Who can be depressed here? I hear you. But then, like I said, just because a place is beautiful doesn't mean that the place that it aligns with you. So anyway, there's that. The next thing I wanted to comment on, people have shared concern about my headphones when I'm on the beach, that I'm not going to hear somebody. And this technology allows for what's called a transparent experience. and I can hear everything. Not only that, I can see behind me in the video, and if I'm not on video, I'm usually watching, and then my dogs. They're gonna let me know if anybody is anywhere near me. So there's that. Thank you for the concern. I'm pretty good there. Somebody else asked how many times I've used mace. Never. I've never used mace. That's my point. Like, I've never felt the need to carry on me. I've thought about it a couple times, like, hey, this would be a good idea. There's been a couple times where I've, carried my knife in my hand, especially walking home in Puerto Escondido at night. There was a time or two that, yeah, I just had it in my hand. But this was the first time that I'm like, I need to be armed. And that's just my point. Like, this isn't me bitching and complaining about it constantly or attracting it to myself. This is me living my life, and it runs into me, and it's prevalent. And one of the reasons it's becoming more prevalent is because of who we have in charge in the US. They have emboldened these assholes to behave the way that they behave without worrying about any recourse. I mean, we've got a rapist in office and all these other people, not a single Epstein file arrest, but we're gonna worry about everything else. So this makes it to where these men think that they can just, and who's to say they can't? Because that's clearly what's being demonstrated, right? Modeling behavior is the most impactful influence. And what's being modeled is do whatever the fuck you want. If you're white. Okay. And a man. The other couple things here. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to address, because it was a very valid point, but it requires nuance to understand what I mean. Guys, if you're following me, you're gonna have to do nuance. I'm not gonna say everything perfectly all the time. Sometimes I speak in absolutes, and it's not necessarily an absolute. Yesterday I thought about it when I said, anytime you're ever giving help that wasn't asked for, it's gonna be perceived as an insult in a way. That's nuanced, right? I mean, like, unsolicited advice. If somebody's hurt and you go run and offer help, that's different. Like, so we got to use some common sense here. But for the most part, if you're offering unsolicited advice, it's not going to go down well. But I mentioned something about not letting fear dictate and getting back on the horse and those types of things. And a commenter said, well, basically that's bullshit because you left Texas because you were afraid. Yes and no. It's different, right? So I was afraid in the States, and I didn't want to stay there anymore. What I'm talking about is letting fear keep you from doing what you want to do. If I'm absolutely gonna stick by my family, who doesn't stick by me, so that's not something that was a desire. But I heard a dog. Or was so in love with Texas that I felt I always needed to be there, or that I felt like my country wasn't falling apart, or that it was still the land of the free and something worth really fighting for. That's different. Fear motivated me, but it didn't keep me from doing something that I wanted to do in that instance. And I wanted to leave. And it's also evaluating the situation and making a judgment call based on, like I said before, pattern recognition. My first right amendments are gone. I know that means it's all gone. Maybe it takes some other people more exposure, whatever, to understand that, but I see it right away. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying this with humility. I'm trying to help people understand that your intuition fucking matters. And listening to yourself above other people who might not understand what you're doing or why you're doing it is extremely important. Anyway. So when I talk about fear not dictating and getting back on the horse, I mean having things, I think it's a howler monkey, which is one of the first ones I've heard here. Anyway. So, in Puerto Viejo, anyway. So, that's what I mean. That's the nuance, right? That if you are walking down a street towards an alley and there's nobody else around and it's dark, you look at that alley and you say, yeah, I'm not going to go in there. That's not fear dictating. That's common sense and being smart. Maybe walking past this guy on purpose the next morning was similar to that. But the thing is, I don't want to go down the alley. I do want to go down the beach. And I did what I could to secure myself. And also I felt that it was important that he not see that he's going to change my behavior in that way. So there's going to be some nuance here, guys. From the surface level, that's a valid point. You don't let fear dictate, but you ran from the US. Sure. The same way that I would run from a bomb. And I don't want to stay around the bomb, so that's not a problem. Fear is informing there fear is more informing there than dictating. And then I wanted to talk today about full moon in Capricorn that's happening right now. I saw something today that said something about this full moon is exposing the family dynamics that had you, I forget what it was saying. Saying small or feeling afraid, that's what it was. Exposing the family dynamics that kept you in a state of fear in your childhood. And that's what I experienced growing up. I was always afraid. Sometimes when I would go, my stepmom was very kind. She still is. But my dad would have issues with his anger or making me feel like I was in the way or a burden, or so like I said before, I was raised to be seen and not heard. It's very true. And that was, my dad's was the nice place to be. My mom and stepfather's on the cattle ranch was horrible. The only place, and then I was bullied in school. So the only place that I ever really felt safe was the school bus. And that's been just kind of a fact of my life. But now I'm getting fucking pissed about it. And I think that that's what the full moon is bringing up. Of course, also the hormones. So hormones and the full moon hitting my family and stability and all of that stuff, it's causing me to go gorilla mode again. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. Ladies, I think we should be pissed. And people who had caregivers that were unkind and threatened your safety on the daily. Now, I wasn't physically beaten, except I would get whoopings with the belt. But the mental, like I have this intimidating giant figure as a stepfather who made me feel like it was my job to not upset him. And if he was upset, even if it wasn't me, I was the dog that got kicked. And my mom played along with it. She also had a little bit of that going on herself. So very intense. And now I'm getting angry about how surrounded women are by danger constantly, which I think has always been the case, but we're just now really waking up to how pervasive this is, and that it's just so fucked up. Like, and how when you do try to go get help, you're not believed or whatever. There's that whole believe women movement going on for a fucking reason. So if you're feeling pissed off lately, welcome to the club. Going gorilla mode may be appropriate more often than we think. Stop letting people convince you that you're overreacting, or that your intuition is wrong, or that there's nothing for you to worry about, or forget about your politics, which are actually now moral issues. They always were, but now it's very clear. There's really no separation. There's also nothing that politics doesn't touch. So anyway, I think that was it. Oh, the flip today. So I've been working on my mindset around, like I said, this depression's kind of creeping in. My outlook's been a little bleak. And so we got to flip, right? We got to work on the perception. We got to work on the perspective, and moving it from I'm never going to find home or a sense of community to, hey, I found it once in Puerto Escondido. That means that it's available and I could probably find it again or create it again. It doesn't mean that Puerto Escondido is the only option. Being here, shifting from I got to get out of this town, but I can't leave yet, to, okay, now I'm going to shift into tourist mode, may change up my behaviors a little bit to keep myself safe. But I'm just going to go enjoy the restaurants. I'm going to be on the bike. I'm going to enjoy the beaches. I'm going to enjoy my daughter when she comes, and then we'll move on. Am I frustrated that I haven't found home yet? Yeah. But there was no guarantee that it was going to be the first place or the second place or the third place that I stopped. And this is part of the journey. My daughter reminded me that, hey, this is why you took this trip, was maybe you do go back to Mexico. But that was the point of all this, was to see what feels like home. And I have this feeling about, I guess that's something else I need to touch on, is paranoid ideation. I can get a little paranoid sometimes about choosing the wrong thing or not choosing the best option. And this stems from growing up where I had to be perfect. And if I wasn't perfect, I mean, the consequences were intense. So now, if I don't choose right, instead of just understanding that, hey, this is my existence and I might have to pay consequences, but they probably can be reversed, remedied, lived through as they have been. I've survived 100% of my life. I've got all that data to show that I can figure it out. But there's still that undercurrent. And similar to probably one of the reasons why these men are freaking me out is not only should they be freaking me out, but the upbringing dynamic of mean, authoritative white men. So realizing that I may, there is no, and that goes back to that Nietzsche quote I talked about before, that you're always, like, there's a tendency to regret the path not taken because it's just the way that we are. We have nostalgia over what never was. And I am doing my due diligence. I'm puttering around and trying to find the spot. Is it disappointing that this isn't it? Sure, but it's just data. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. If this is a vortex and it's spitting me out, that isn't exactly a rejection. It is a rejection, but it's not maybe something that I should be able to align with. I could choose to take it as an insult, but I mean, it just is. And if the indigenous local people here aren't open to allowing insiders or outsiders, or outsiders are treated in a certain manner, who am I to judge that? Like, if I had this beautiful space and I had people coming in and trying to get cozy with me, I might be a little like, please, I get it. Cool. Okay. Time to move on. But the paranoid ideation is different than what I addressed earlier about just being a paranoid person in general. And the difference is that, and it's funny again, I have borderline personality tendencies, but that might also be CPTSD. Right now they're trying to get complex post-traumatic disorder into the DSM because it's a very real phenomenon and it mimics borderline. So does anxious attachment, also mimics borderline. So even as expert professional, I don't know if it's CPTSD or borderline. I'm thinking it's more CPTSD because if things are cool externally, I'm cool. Like, it's not a problem. Put me in a romantic relationship, my anxious attachment goes through the fucking roof, oftentimes because the men aren't behaving well either, or I'm not choosing well, or there's something threatening my safety or trying to control me. Those things make me nuts. And the thing with CPTSD, if you've never heard of it, PTSD is from one event. Like, you saw your buddies get blown up in war, or you've been attacked, or you suddenly lost a job and lost all your income, or, those are one-off moments. CPTSD is like drops of water that over a long period of time you are exposed to. So my childhood, every day, drops of fear, drops of terror, drops of not feeling safe, not feeling accepted. And then in the military, I was one of 3 females out of 400 guys. And mind you, there were a couple times I felt a little unsafe in the military, but nothing that I ever felt the need to report or wasn't able to handle and move on in the moment. And this guy still freaked me out. So it's not like I don't have a frame of reference here. But 1 of 3 females out of 400 guys, constant microaggressions every single day. When I finally left, my supervisor said, if you had any idea the number of complaints I get on you every day, but none of them are valid. Things like how long it takes me to eat my oatmeal in the morning, or how many times I went to the restroom, or who I'm talking to on spot 13. And I was a good mechanic. And then I took over all these other programs, medical, fitness. I was the additional duties girl. So I was good at what I did, which just made it worse. Anyway, I do say though, men will bitch and moan, women will get you fired. Because I've also dealt with that, where, women will actually make sure that you lose your job if they don't like you. Anyway, so the paranoid versus paranoid ideation. Paranoid ideation is when you're stressed and then your mind goes to worst case scenario. So like if I'm a little low on cash flow, my head will go, oh, we're doomed. This is, no, we're not doomed. We're going to figure it out. Again, 100% of my life data has shown that I figured it out. I've lived on significantly less. My daughter and I were right at the poverty line through her whole life. I've been anyway. So the paranoid ideation though comes in, catastrophizes, and then you got to talk yourself down. Very different from recognizing patterns out here and deducing. Like this is, again, subtlety. This is in nuance. If you're going to follow me, you're going to have to understand nuance, or at least be open to complexity. Again, I'm not going to say everything perfect. I'm not trying to say everything perfect. It's not my jam, but there is still truth in what I'm saying, although it may not be absolute truth, even though I may say it as absolute truth. Again, being human, we gotta give some people grace, right? So anyway, that's the update as far as responses to the reactions I received because of my video. And I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing, even though I'm getting shit like that. Like, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing is because I want to help inspire other people to live the best life possible for them, to face their fears, to, I've said before, be afraid and do it anyway. But there's nuance. Sometimes the fear is you need to get the fuck out of there. Okay. But also inspiring women to use their voice. And even if you've got naysayers, considering the source. These naysayers are people who would behave in the exact manner that I'm trying to get away from. And then I have other comments like, I wouldn't want to be with somebody on the left anyways. What was he thinking? Let me be clear. I don't walk around talking about politics. I pick up on what you say and then figure out who the fuck you voted for and then try to remove myself. I don't engage in it because I understand that these are not people with whom you can have logical rhetoric. These are people who are brainwashed and angry and aggressive, and you're just not going to, it's a waste of breath. So I'm not walking around with a liberal flag. I would hope that it's clear that I am. I'm kind, I'm covered in tattoos, I got my nose pierced. I know that's a whole thing now. Like, MAGA's afraid of women with tattoos and pierced noses. If my hair was blue, oh my God, maybe that's what I gotta do, so I don't have to ward off people like this again. Anyway, time to turn around. We went a long way today, which is good. So yeah, I think that's it. I think I've exhausted all the points that I wanted to touch on today. Oh, one more. I did get a message about that I flow easy in these videos, and like, did it come naturally? How did that occur? And my response back was that exposure therapy is the best here. You just got to do it. You got to record and put out the imperfect, and that when you do that, you're allowing everybody else to be imperfect too. You're giving them the permission and validation and confidence to still share themselves and be fully who they are without feeling like you have to be perfect. And as I've shared with my perfectionistic tendencies, that's a big deal for me. So this wasn't just a, hey, I'm excellent at this all of a sudden out the gate and that's why I do it. No, I mean, I'm sure you can go back through my stuff and find some shit, like, and I'm sure there will be more shit. But that's just it, right? Like when I went to Mexico, I was in a bathing suit that like held in my stomach, and it was a full one piece. And it was one of the, you know, I had only started being in a bathing suit since before COVID, you know, so it's like, what, 5 years when I started going to World Springs in Dallas. And that one piece bathing suit worked well. Then I get to Mexico and everybody's in dental floss. Doesn't matter the body type. And it allowed me to do the same thing. It allowed me to get a string bikini or 4, and even if I'm having a puffy day, even if I'm not at the weight that I was back then, fuck it. So when you get vulnerable and share your imperfections, it gives other people permission to be human, which is fucking beautiful. So that exposure therapy, also I pick a few points that I want to touch on and I riff from there. So if you're considering putting out content or sharing yourself in any capacity like that, you just got to do it. And are there shitty comments? Yes. And I deal with them daily. I'm getting better at it. And just delete and block. I've seen another influencer, we're not influencers, we're, what are we? Because I'm not selling anything at this point. And if I end up selling anything, it would just be more of what I'm talking about here, which is not what I'm trying to do. But she also deals with this stuff. A lot of the, you know, once you get a husband comments, or, you know, you're bringing this on yourself comments and shit like that, or just straight up mean stuff. And does my heart race when I go to open the comments? Yeah, still, but they stick with me less. They're not haunting me anymore. It's like, okay, because I can see what they are. I can see who they are. They're not based on my upbringing, like the bullying and things like that. Exposure or visibility meant punishment for me. So even though my personality doesn't lay low, I've still tried to lay low in some capacity. So this is in direct violation of that, like putting myself out there, being vulnerable, being flawed, contradicting myself, all of those things, and then learning to deal with the pushback. The pushback here isn't actually threatening my safety. Who knows who these people are? And when we consider the source, a lot of it, especially the white guy US stuff, pushback is MAGA. Like, and I already know what kind of creature that is. So we got to consider the source on this stuff. But it does take a little bit of shoring up. And if I wasn't so passionate about the intention of my sharing, I might delete myself from social media because of this stuff. It can be that painful at times, but fortunately I've pushed through most of that and it's not so bad anymore. And I only put myself through that in the first place because I believe in what I'm doing. So anyway, okay, that's enough for today. Bye guys.